My name is Tarila. I'm 29 years old. And the woman everyone once called a curse became the reason my life turned into a miracle. They laughed at her, mocked her, called her a witch, called her barren. But love doesn't need blood to build a legacy. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Before the luxury cars, before the world knew my name, there was Mama Enitan, a widow, a woman the village feared, a woman they whispered about at the well, in the market behind closed doors. They said she was cursed because her womb never bore fruit. They said she practiced dark things in the night. But on one cold evening in OMONI, destiny cried in the darkness. And the woman they all despised did something that would change 2 lives forever. Why did an entire community turn their backs on one woman? How did a single act of compassion rewrite the future? This is a story about rejection and redemption, about how one person's refusal to look away became the foundation of something extraordinary. Before destiny knocked on her door, silence was Mama Enitan's only companion. She was 52 years old when our story begins, living alone in a small mud house on the edge of OMONI village. Her husband had died 12 years earlier from something strange, as if he was drying up till he died, leaving her with nothing but a 1/4 acre of farmland and a reputation she never asked for. In our community, a woman without children is not just unfortunate. She is incomplete. She is suspicious. She is someone to be pitied at best and feared at worst. And Mama Enitan was both. Every morning, she would wake before dawn to tend her vegetables. Okra, tomatoes, peppers. She would tie her wrapper tight around her waist and walk the dusty road to the village square to sell what little she could harvest. The other women would turn their heads when she approached. Mothers would pull their children closer as if barrenness were contagious. Young men would make jokes just loud enough for her to hear. And through it all, Mama Enitan said nothing. She simply worked. She survived. But survival is not the same as living. At night, she would sit alone by her kerosene lamp, eating her one meal of the day. Sometimes it was rice. Sometimes just yam. She had grown used to the emptiness, the quiet, the way her voice sounded strange in her own ears because she went days without speaking to anyone. She had learned to live with rejection. What she didn't know was that everything was about to change. It was a Thursday evening in late October. The air was cold and sharp, carrying the smell of burning leaves and distant rain. Mama Enitan was walking home from the fields, her basket balanced on her head, when she heard it. A sound so faint she almost missed it. A cry, weak and desperate, coming from somewhere near the old community hall that had been abandoned for years after the roof caved in. Most people avoided that area after dark. There were stories, superstitions. But Mama Enitan had stopped fearing whispers a long time ago. She set down her basket and picked up her lantern. The cry came again, stronger this time. A child. Her heart began to race. She moved toward the sound, her worn sandals crunching against the gravel. Behind the crumbling wall of the hall, partially hidden by overgrown grass, she found her. A little girl, thin as a whisper, clothes torn and filthy, eyes half closed, shivering in the cold. Mama Enitan dropped to her knees. The child was barely conscious. Her lips were cracked, her breathing shallow. Someone had left her here to die. Mama Enitan had no child of her own. But that night, she gave a stranger the gift of survival. She didn't think, didn't hesitate, didn't stop to wonder why this child was here, or who she belonged to. She just acted. She scooped the girl into her arms, grabbed her lantern, and began to run. Her knees ached. Her back screamed in protest. But she didn't stop. The nearest clinic was 2 miles away, and she covered that distance faster than she had moved in years. When she burst through the clinic door, the night nurse looked up in shock. Nurse Adiz had known Mama Enitan for years. She had delivered dozens of babies in this village. But she had never seen this kind of urgency in the widow's eyes. The nurse took the child immediately, laying her on the examination table. Dehydration, malnutrition, fever. The girl was barely holding on. Adiz worked quickly, wrapping the child in blankets. And when she was done, she turned to Mama Enitan with a question that hung heavy in the air. Whose child is this? Mama Enitan didn't know. No one had reported a missing child. It was as if she had been erased, discarded, forgotten. The nurse said treatment would cost money. Not much by some standards, but everything by Mama Enitan's. She reached into the small pouch tied around her waist and pulled out every coin she had. Her entire savings from 3 months of selling vegetables. She placed it on the counter, without a word. Nurse Adiz looked at her for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll do what I can. 3 days later, the girl woke up. Her eyes opened slowly, taking in the unfamiliar ceiling, the strange smells, the figure sitting beside her bed. Mama Enitan had barely left the clinic. She had slept in a chair, eaten nothing but bananas and water, refusing to leave until the child was stable. When the girl's eyes met hers, something passed between them. Something wordless and profound. The child kept making sounds. Mama Enitan took her small hand and squeezed gently. Tarila. You will be called Tarila, and you will live. She took me home on a Sunday morning. Yes, I was that child. I remember fragments of those early days. The way her house smelled like firewood and dried herbs as I grew under her care. The softness of the mat she laid out for me to sleep on. The way she would hum while cooking, filling the silence with something other than loneliness. She fed me slowly, carefully. She washed my hair, got me clothes, spoke to me in a voice so gentle I couldn't believe it was real. But the village had other thoughts. Word spread quickly. The witch had brought home a strange child. The barren woman who couldn't have her own was now playing mother to a girl no one knew. The rumors grew darker. Some said she planned to use me for rituals. Others claimed I was a spirit child sent to finish her curse. Days became weeks, weeks became months, and all we had was each other. Women whispered at the well. Men shook their heads at the market. And the children were the cruelest. They would throw stones at Mama Enitan's house, call her names, spit at her feet when she walked past. One evening, a group of village elders came to her door. They said it wasn't proper, that she should take me to the authorities, that a woman like her had no business raising a child. Mama Enitan stood in that doorway, her back straight, her voice calm, and told them something I will never forget. God gave me this child when the world threw her away. You can say what you want, but she stays. They left angry, and the persecution got worse. But here's what they didn't understand. Mama Enitan had lived her whole life under the weight of other people's judgment. She had been called every name, survived every insult, and she had learned something powerful in that loneliness. She had learned that the opinions of cruel people hold no real power. That love is a choice, not a condition. And she chose me. Every single day, she chose me. If you're still watching, type love wins in the comments. Let's flood this space with hope. Because what happened next proves that goodness always finds its way back. Love grew in the soil of scorn. That's how I remember those years. While the village watched with suspicion, Mama Enitan built something beautiful in the quiet of that little mud house. She taught me to read under the shade of the mango tree in her yard. She would trace letters in the dirt with a stick, her patience endless. She told me stories. Not fairy tales, but real stories. About her own childhood. About her late husband. About the strength it takes to keep moving when the world wants you to stop. And slowly, I began to heal. Not just physically, but in ways I didn't have words for yet. When I turned 7, she took me to the village school. The headmaster, Mr. Babatunda, was a stern man with little tolerance for disruption. He looked at Mama Enitan with barely concealed disgust. You want to enroll this child? Do you even know where she came from? Mama Enitan placed her hand on my shoulder. She came from suffering, and now she's going to school. She paid the enrollment fee with money she had saved from selling her best wrapper. I later learned it was the only nice piece of clothing she owned. She sold it so I could have an education. School was hard at first. The other children had been warned by their parents to stay away from me. I was the witch's daughter, the cursed one. I ate lunch alone, played alone, walked home alone, but I studied. God, I studied like my life depended on it, because in many ways it did. Mama Enitan would stay up with me at night, the kerosene lamp burning low, encouraging as I do homework. She barely understood herself. She never went past primary school, but she made sure I had every opportunity she never did. And something remarkable happened. I started to excel. By the time I was 10, I was at the top of my class. When I was 12, I won a regional science competition. The teacher stopped seeing me as the witch's child and started seeing me as a student with potential. But success has a way of breeding new kinds of resentment. Some parents complained that I was taking opportunities from their children. That Mama Enitan must have done something unnatural to make me so smart. The accusations never stopped. They just changed shape. Through it all, Mama Enitan sacrificed everything. She stopped eating proper meals so I could have enough food. She wore the same 3 wrappers until they were threadbare so she could afford my school supplies. She worked in the fields until her hands bled so I could attend extra lessons. At night, I would sometimes catch her sitting outside, staring at the stars, and I knew she was tired. So tired. But she never complained. Not once. Instead, she would look at me and say, "Education is the only inheritance I can give you. Make it count." When I was 17, something extraordinary happened. A teacher submitted my application to a scholarship program for underprivileged students. I didn't think I had a chance. Hundreds of students were competing for just 10 spots. But 3 months later, a letter arrived. I had been accepted. Full scholarship to study engineering at a university. For years. Everything covered. When Mama Enitan read that letter, she cried. It was the first time I had ever seen her cry. She held me so tight I could barely breathe. "You did it," she whispered. "You did it." Leaving was the hardest thing I ever did. The morning I was supposed to take the bus to resume, I almost didn't go. I looked at Mama Enitan standing in front of that mud house, her face trying so hard to be strong, and I wanted to stay. To take care of her the way she had taken care of me. But she wouldn't let me. "This is your time," she said. "Don't look back." She gave me her late husband's Bible, the only valuable thing she had left. And I left. The first year away was agony. I called every week, but the conversations grew shorter. The village had no reliable phone service. Letters took weeks to arrive. I sent money when I could, but it was never enough. I was drowning in classes, working part-time jobs to cover expenses the scholarship didn't include, trying to build a future I could barely see. And slowly, without meaning to, the calls became less frequent. The letters stopped. Life pulled me forward, and Mama Enitan became a memory I carried but couldn't reach. I told myself I would go back. Visit during the holidays. Bring her to the city. But there was always one more exam. One more opportunity. One more reason to delay. And the guilt ate at me every single day. Years passed. I graduated with honors. Got a job at a tech startup. The company exploded. Within 3 years, we went public. Within 5, I was heading my own division. By the time I was 28, I had become one of the youngest Black female executives. The money came fast. The recognition faster. My face was on magazine covers. I spoke at conferences. I lived in a world Mama Enitan couldn't have imagined in her wildest dreams. But success has a strange way of making you forget where you came from, until something forces you to remember. It was a Tuesday morning when my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Nurse Adiz, the same woman who had treated me all those years ago. Her voice was gentle but urgent. "Tarila, it's about Mama Enitan. She's not well. She's been asking for you." My blood went cold. I hadn't been home in 11 years. 11 years. I had sent money occasionally, but I hadn't heard her voice. Hadn't seen her face. I had been so consumed by building my empire that I forgot about the woman who built me. I dropped everything. Canceled meetings. Delegated projects. booked the next flight, and arranged for a car service to take me straight to OMONI. As the plane descended, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Fear. Not of failure or rejection, but of being too late. Of arriving to find that the woman who saved my life had died waiting for me to come home. The drive from to OMONI took 3 hours. Every mile felt like punishment. I watched the landscape change from city to rural. Paved roads became dirt paths. And then, finally, I saw it. The village. Smaller than I remembered. Poorer. Forgotten by time and progress. When the convoy of SUVs rolled into OMONI, everything stopped. People came out of their houses. Children ran alongside the vehicles. Men and women stood frozen, trying to understand what they were seeing. Luxury cars didn't come to places like this. I stepped out wearing a tailored suit, my hair pulled back, confidence I had spent years building wrapped around me like armor. But underneath I was terrified. I asked someone where Mama Enitan lived. They pointed, their faces full of confusion. And I walked. Past the well, where women used to gossip. Past the market where she sold vegetables. Past the school, where I learned to dream. Until I reached that mud house. It looked smaller. Older. The roof was patched with rusted metal. The walls were crumbling. But it was still standing. Mama Enitan was sitting outside on a wooden stool, her back bent, her hands resting on a cane. She had aged so much. Her hair was completely gray. Her face was lined with years of hard labor and loneliness. But when she looked up and saw me, her eyes cleared. And I saw her truly see me. I walked toward her, my legs shaking, and dropped to my knees right there in the dirt. The same dirt where she used to teach me letters. Where she used to grow vegetables to feed us. I took her weathered hands in mine, and I said the only words that mattered.
Mama.
I came home. She didn't speak at first. She just stared at me, tears streaming down her face, her lips trembling. Then she touched my cheek, as if making sure I was real. Tarila, she whispered. My Tarila. Around us, the village gathered. The same people who had mocked her, who had thrown stones, who had called her cursed. They stood in silence, watching a reunion they never thought would happen. And I felt something shift in the air. This wasn't just about me coming home. This was about justice. Not the loud, vengeful kind, but the quiet kind that comes when the truth finally reveals itself. I helped Mama Enitan to her feet and turned to face the crowd. There were faces I recognized. Mr. Babatunda, the headmaster. Nurse Adiz. Women who used to whisper. Men who used to laugh. I didn't feel anger. I felt sadness. Sadness that it took my success for them to see her worth. That they needed proof before they could recognize love. But I also felt something else.
Power.
Not over them, but for her. I spoke clearly, my voice carrying across the gathering. This woman, the one you called a witch, the one you mocked and rejected, gave me everything. When the world left me to die, she chose life. When society said I was nothing, she said I was worthy. Everything I am began in that mud house. I pulled out an envelope from my bag. Inside were property deeds. 6 months earlier, I had quietly purchased 5 acres of land on the edge of the village. The same land where Mama Enitan used to work in the fields. I had hired architects, construction crews, built something in secret. And now it was time to reveal it. I handed Mama Enitan the keys and pointed down the road. Come with me, I said. We walked together, slowly, the entire village following behind us like a procession. And when we reached the clearing, there it stood. A beautiful house. Not a mansion trying to intimidate, but a real home. 2 stories. Solar panels. Running water. A garden already planted. A porch with rocking chairs. Everything she had never had. Everything she deserved. Mama Enitan stared at it, her hands covering her mouth. She looked at me, then back at the house, unable to process what she was seeing. This is yours, I told her. Every wall, every room, every comfort you were denied. This is yours. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. And I held her the way she once held a dying child in the darkness. The crowd stood silent. Some people were crying. Others looked ashamed. A few elders stepped forward, trying to apologize, trying to explain. But Mama Enitan raised her hand. When she spoke, her voice was stronger than I'd heard in years. "I forgive you," she said simply. "Not because what you did was right, but because bitterness is a weight I refuse to carry anymore. Today we bury the past. Today we plant something new." It was the most powerful thing I had ever heard. She didn't humiliate them, didn't seek revenge. She just chose grace. And in that moment, I understood something profound. Strength isn't about domination. It's about choosing love when hate would be easier. It's about building when the world wants you to break. That's what she had been teaching me all along. But I wasn't done. I gathered the village again the next day and made an announcement. I was establishing a foundation in Mama Enitan's name, a scholarship fund for orphans and abandoned children in the village and neighboring towns. Every year, 10 students would receive full funding for their education. Because if one woman's love could change my life, imagine what could happen if we multiplied that love. Imagine how many futures we could rewrite. The foundation launched 3 months later. In the first year, we supported 23 children. The second year, 47. Today, we've helped over 200 young people access education they never thought possible. Mama Enitan moved into her new house. I hired a caretaker to help her, made sure she had everything she needed. And I visited. Not once a year, not when it was convenient, but regularly. I brought her to California on a trip so she could see the world beyond OMONI. She stood in my office overlooking the city and cried. Not because of the view, but because she finally understood that every choice she made mattered. That her sacrifices hadn't been in vain. That love truly does build legacies stronger than any curse. The village changed too. Slowly. People started treating Mama Enitan with respect. Children who once threw stones now greeted her warmly. The same women who gossiped at the well started asking her for advice. Not because of my money, though that certainly helped change perceptions, but because they finally saw what had always been there. A woman of extraordinary courage. A woman who loved louder than the world's hate. And in seeing her, some of them began to change themselves. This is where our story ends. But it's also where something bigger begins. Mama Enitan is 70 years old now. She still lives in that house. Still tends her garden. Still welcomes strangers with the same grace she showed a dying child 23 years ago. And I'm still learning from her. Still trying to love the way she loved me. Unconditionally. Without hesitation. Without needing permission from a world that rarely grants it. Here's what I want you to understand. Love doesn't wait for blood to act. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't require perfect circumstances or ideal timing. Mama Enitan didn't save me because I was special. She saved me because she refused to look away. Because she believed that every life has value, even when society says otherwise. That decision, made in a moment of compassion, created ripples that continue to spread. Not just through my life, but through every child we help. Every family we support. Every person who hears the story and decides to act. So I'm asking you, what part of this story moved you most? Was it the rejection Mama Enitan faced? The years of sacrifice? The moment of return? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us how this story made you feel. And if you've ever been touched by someone's unexpected kindness, share that too. Because these stories matter. They remind us of what's possible when we choose compassion over cruelty. When we choose to see people beyond society's labels. If this story impacted you, hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss our upcoming videos. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's been rejected. Someone who's sacrificing in silence. Someone who thinks their kindness doesn't matter. Because it does. Every act of love matters. Every choice to lift someone up creates possibilities we can't always see in the moment. But they're there. Growing. Waiting to bloom into something extraordinary. What would you have done in Mama Enitan's position? Would you have stopped to investigate that cry in the darkness? Would you have spent your last coins on a stranger's child? Would you have endured years of mockery for someone society threw away? Think about that honestly, because the truth is, we all have opportunities to be someone's Mama Enitan. We all encounter moments where we can choose to look away or lean in, and those choices define us more than any success or achievement ever could. And if you thought the story was powerful, you need to hear what's coming next, because we have a tale that will absolutely shake you. Until then, remember this: your capacity to love someone else might just be the miracle they've been praying for. Don't waste it.